It doesn't matter what kind of e-commerce brand you're building, you still need a rock-solid way to grow and scale your company like clockwork. Welcome to 7 Figures and Beyond, an e-commerce marketing podcast for D2C brand owners and marketers looking for best practices that include proven strategies and tactics to grow an e-commerce brand to 7 figures and beyond. Bringing 18 plus years of marketing experience as an e-commerce brand owner and e-commerce agency owner, please welcome your host, Greg Shuey.
Hey everyone, welcome to the 7 Figures and Beyond e-commerce marketing podcast. I am your host, Greg Shuey. If you've listened to any of our episodes, you know that I eat, breathe, and sleep this stuff, and I am really excited to be with you again today. My guest today, her name is Robin Johnson, and Robin has been heralded as one of the country's foremost leaders on the topic of selling and marketing products on Amazon. She's been a guest on shows like Entrepreneur on Fire, Confessions of a Marketer, and she regularly speaks at shows all over the world. By the way, Robin, kudos to you because I'm not a speaker. Nothing's more painful to me than getting up in front of a crowd. But she does it. She's done it at SMX London, PubCon. I mean, that was the first marketing conference I ever went to in Vegas. That was great. Prosper and more. She is also the co-founder of Marketplace Blueprint. They are a digital agency that specializes in listing optimization and advertising on Amazon. She has over a decade of experience selling online on Amazon, eBay, and other e-commerce venues. Over the next 30 to 40 minutes, we're going to dive into how compliance and inventory levels can completely derail your entire Amazon strategy. I'm not an Amazon guy, and I am really excited to be able to learn about this topic. So Robin, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me on. I love, because I've been eating, breathing, sleeping Amazon. So it is so fun to be able to share. And as I have gotten to know people outside of the Amazon space, I kind of tell people it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland. It looks like a butterfly, but it's actually a bread and butterfly. So there's a lot of things that have the same labels, but they might behave differently. And so happy to share from my perspective and experience with Amazon.
That's awesome. So when was the last time you spoke at PubCon?
The last one, that would have been October.
Nice. Cool.
Yes.
Is that still, I mean, they're all over these days, right? Do they still do the one in Vegas?
Yeah, that one was in Vegas. I don't know if he's going to do the March one because it hasn't been announced yet, the one in Austin, but I think he's still planning on doing the one in October. I've been speaking at PubCon since I want to say 2016, 2017. And I love it. I think it's a great conference to meet people and really good quality content and great people.
I'm an introvert. That stuff that rocks my world. So yeah. Well, before we dive in, could you take a few minutes to introduce yourself to our listeners and share a little bit about your personal story and then how you've gotten to where you are today?
Yeah. So, one of the reasons why I don't shy away from public speaking is before this, I was in the least capitalistic profession possible. I was a youth minister. I worked at Kinko's and some other place. There's several other places before that. But once you try to sell chastity to teenagers, everything else is easy. So,
okay.
But my son got sick, and when you work for the church, they say the benefits are out of this world because the pay is not. We took $100. We were broke. Anytime the money, the air conditioner would make a sound or the car would, would stutter, then I would get really, really scared. We took $100. We took $100 out of our emergency fund, and we started buying things, selling them on Craigslist and then eBay and then Amazon. And we took that $100 and we turned it into $1 million business in just a few years. And that was in 2010-ish. So we started selling it on Amazon at a really high volume. And then we started coaching high volume sellers. As we started moving from kind of this reselling and working with brands, we realized what an issue Amazon was for brand owners. And about 8-ish years ago, we started the agency. And so we're a full service agency that handles all of the things like, hey, Amazon, this baby spoon is not a sexual wellness product, to trying to explain to somebody why they can't say their sock is antimicrobial because Amazon will ask for an EPA registration number. So all of those weird things. And then, of course, the advertising and the SEO as well.
Cool. Awesome. That is a great story. Thank you for
Thanks.
sharing that. That is fantastic. So you've gone the rounds. You've been a seller. You've been a consultant. You do work now. So before we get into kind of the meat of what we're going to talk about in terms of like compliance and inventory issues, can you help our listeners really understand how Amazon works and why listing restrictions and suppressions and other inventory issues impacts their overall ranking and ability to sell on the platform?
Yeah. So if we were going to oversimplify things, you would say that while Amazon looks like Google, it behaves very differently. It doesn't care about fresh content. It doesn't care about unique content.
No.
It doesn't care about dwell time. It only cares about making a sale. It's the most capitalistic search engine out there. So if you want to be the number one seller for a spatula, then you have to show Amazon that you will convert for spatula. So if you launch a product, I wouldn't recommend launching spatulas right now, by the way. But if you wanted to, let's say the current best-selling spatula sells 1,000 units a day. It's probably way more than that, but let's just say 1,000.
Yeah.
That means that you would need to sell 1,010, 1,009, 1,002. You'd have to consistently outsell that. And we have to do that for each one of those keywords. So what's really, really important is that you not only have a product that has great image, the primary image is your ad creative. Your title is your ad creative for most ad types. There are some exceptions. But so that's really the SERP is really created from your PDP, your product detail page. So you have to have that. But the 10 commandments of Amazon selling are that you never run out of inventory. You never run out of inventory. You never run out of inventory. Keep going. There's because when you run out of inventory or your listing is somehow unavailable, or what's called the buy box is suppressed. And the buy box is where it says that. Have you ever gone to an Amazon listing and there's no add to cart button?
Yep.
So when that happens, that means the buy box suppressed. You can't run ads. You're not going to convert as well. So any of those things are going to cause you to not get those sales on those important keywords while your competitors are. So even if nothing else changes, you're going to fall down the ranks. So you could have spent a whole bunch of money because ads impact organic on Amazon trying to launch and rank your product. If you run out of stock, then you're going to fall back down and you're going to have to climb back up again. So it's really important that you keep your listings active and with and converting at the same rate.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, cool. That's a great download. Thank you for sharing that. As with just about any other platform out there, Amazon rolls out a lot of changes every single year. As you think back to 2024, like what were some of the biggest changes that they rolled out that impacted sellers?
I think they did roll out a ton of ad stuff, and that could be a whole other thing. They changed some things with inbound shipping. That could be a whole other thing. But I think the thing that I've seen that has really derailed a couple of companies that they didn't expect was Amazon was determined that they're liable for recalled items. And you might think, well, yeah, they should be. And I agree, 100%. Yeah, they should be. But it caused them to make some policy changes that impacted people in some different ways. And they've also have gotten in trouble several times for compliance with things like CPSC, EPA. And so the last year has really tightened that down. So before, maybe it was the wild, wild west, I would say in the last 2 to 3 years, it's become more of a legitimate, like mature marketplace where you need to have all your ducks in a row and your marketing ready. But because of those compliance issues and because of the changes with UPCs, now you have to, it used to be you could just grab a recycled UPC off of eBay. But now Amazon wants that UPC to match the brand that's registered with Amazon with your trademark at the GS1 database. And if it doesn't, it can cause issues. They might not even let you create the listing. We even had a brand that they had a GS1 attached to their brand 5 years ago, they recycled that product, that UPC, from one product to a new product. We tried to update it last year, and Amazon actually gave them a policy violation for materially changing that listing. So it's really important now that need to spend the $42 or whatever it is at GS1. And especially for newer brands, we find sometimes they want to try to find a less expensive way. If things go really, really well, you could cause a really big problem. There were a lot of companies this year that Amazon basically said, tough cookies, you shouldn't have broken the policy in order to get that brand changed, or in order to be able to continue to make listing updates, or we're just going to shut that listing down completely for violating that policy. And you're going to have to start all over again, which means they had to get new reviews. For if you had the right connections, you sometimes were able to get it changed if you were in the right programs where they could help you. But you want to make sure you're really thinking that through. And then the compliance things, Amazon has gotten a lot stricter about. And so, we had a toy company that's like, can we just say that this product is for 13 years and older? And I'm like, no, because we have a 7-year-old in the image. So no, we can't, because that law is there for a reason. But they're a lot stricter on that. And all of those things can cause your listing to go unavailable.
Yeah. There's no more just winging it. It's not the wild anymore.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So I know you work with a lot of clients. Could you share an example of how a compliance issue really derailed their growth? And then what were the consequences and how could they have been avoided?
Yeah. So we have a product line. If you know what Funko Pop action figures are, it's like a competitor to that. And they had hired, somebody, an inexpensive agency or consultant to help them update their listings. And that person changed the category of their product to be in the toys and games thing. And they also added the word doll to the title. And so what happened is the word doll by itself and changing something into toys and games will trigger a CPSC requirement. So if they have, that means that Amazon's going to expect that item to be tested, or you have to submit multiple seller support tickets to prove to them that this is not a child's related product. It's not a children's product. So, and most of the people who have been on Amazon know the EPA registration thing and pesticide thing has been an issue for many years.
Sure.
But you might not know, if you're not in the Amazon space, they're very particular around the words that relate to pesticides. So you can't say antimicrobial, you can't say antibacterial, you can't say deters pests unless you have an EPA registration number. So if your product does actually do that, they expect you to have that registration number. And if it's not, they're going to make you remove that. We even had a client that they were in a skin bleaching product and they've done everything right, but Amazon upped what was required as far as compliance and made it so that that particular category was no longer eligible for advertising. And that pretty much put that company out of business. They're actually closing down right now. So, when it comes to Amazon, they are like a giant tank rolling down the road. So it's best if you can run with them or get out of their way. If you're trying to, fight them against where they're going, it's not going to go well.
Got it. Okay. Well, let's talk about inventory for a couple of minutes. So you mentioned that, the 10 commandments are don't run out of product, don't run out of inventory. So how do those inventory levels directly impact someone to be able to scale on Amazon? And then are there strategies that sellers can use to maintain optimal stock levels?
Yeah. So in the beginning, we kind of just started with running ads and creating listings. What we found is we really need to help give brands restock recommendations, work with them to help make sure they're sending inventory in. And part of that is, knowing how you're shipping products into Amazon. If you're using LTL or FTL, then those delivery times expand significantly as you get close to Christmas. You need to know if you're sending to a distribution warehouse because that will change your lead time. But the nice thing about what we do is, and if you're doing this would be a great service for you to add, is that when we're looking at the inventory levels and we're looking at the ads, if a product is going to go out of stock, the first thing we want to do is pull back any discounts and pull back any ads. Because what we do is we want to slow down that conversion so that we don't have an actual out of stock. This way we're not going, maybe we're moving from here to, we're moving just down a couple of spots on the list. We're moving just to page 2 and not to page 47.
Right.
If it's a listing that's on a variation where, you're just out of the blue of your socks, that's going to have less of an impact than if it's by itself. So if you have a product that's a variation, then you do have a little bit more flexibility. Maybe you just take the discount off of the blue because that's the one you're running out of, and you increase the discount on the black and the red and the green. So people who were kind of ambiguous about color might be willing to go towards that less expensive one, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. And you could inch prices up on products that you think will have a longer stock out price. But that can be, you have to be very careful in the way that you do that. If Amazon feels the price has gone up too much too fast, you'll lose the buy box for that. And that's going to hurt you more than it's going to help you.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So let's pretend a seller's running a promotion and, it goes gangbusters in 24 hours and they accidentally sell out. Like, is there anything they can do there to make sure that they don't get nailed or that they get suppressed or whatnot from Amazon, or are they just out of luck?
So remind me to ask if I forget the suppress part. But if we're going to run a promotion and we're going to be running ads, one of the things we'll look at is we'll say, okay, we have a conversion rate of about this much. We're spending about this much. This is how much inventory. You always want to keep 4 to 6 weeks of inventory at Amazon, right? And then you want to have inventory so if we're going to run a big promotion, I want that 4 to 6 weeks of inventory, not to just be sending into Amazon, not to have arrived at Amazon, but to be fully checked in and available. And this is really, really important. People will say it's arrived at Amazon, it's been received. If it doesn't say that item is available, we don't want to start that promotion because we want to have not only that inventory checked in, but those ads will deliver even if it hasn't really kind of gotten in fully into that final warehouse. And then it will show an extended delivery date, which is going to tank your conversion, right? So you want to make sure that you have fully available units and we have inventory that we can send in to supplement as soon as if that first day of that promotion, things go really, really great. Since we have 4 to 6 weeks worth of inventory, even if it's more expensive, we might send a small parcel in the very next day to kind of accommodate for that. If we're really this could go a lot of different ways, we'll add a merchant fulfilled SKU onto the back of that as well.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is you should never accidentally run out of product when you're selling on Amazon. 4 to 6 weeks, ready to ship. And then you need to also have stuff in your own warehouse in case something happens. Got it.
And it's not the end of the world. If you run out of stock, we're the only time where I've seen it really like this was the end of the world for a brand is it was a board game that had a really successful Kickstarter. They had done really, really well. We sold, they had goals. The first year we worked with them, we sold them out. We started, the goal was to sell out maybe by January. We sold out by November 1st. We really were able to ramp them up fast. But then they had some issues with their supplier and it took them 8 months to get restocked. And board games especially, they're not, you have to really, there has to be some external awareness. And so when they came back the next year, they kind of expected that same, oomph. And, it was a much steeper climb and they weren't completely prepared for that. So, if it's a short out of stock, you can recover from it. The longer you're out of stock, the more you're almost starting from scratch.
When you've had to start from scratch again, what does that ramp up time look like from going to not doing very well anymore to back to feeling good about where you're at sales wise?
So anytime you're this is kind of what's kind of funky. So on Amazon, you might say, we're going to run ads that are intentionally unprofitable. If you were just to look at the campaign or you were just to look at things, we want to look at, we look at ACOS instead of ROAS most of the time. And so basically we look at tacos, which is the equivalent of MERS, right? We want to look at how those ads are impacting organic sales. So we might say, okay, you're coming back into stock. We're going to run ads that we know you're going to be losing $6 on every unit. And we're going to run that and the reason we're going to do that, we're going to focus on a very small number of keywords and we're going to focus on ranking for those keywords. So another thing I like to tell clients is that advertising on Amazon is like arguing with a toddler. Pick your battles, but win at all costs. The biggest mistake you can do is try to run ads on all of your products. Incremental sales is not a path to profitability on Amazon. You want to have enough sales for specific keywords to drive that organic rank.
Okay, cool. So we've talked a little bit about sending inventory into Amazon, FBA also, as that is referred to. What's your advice on balancing fulfillment options like FBA as well as fulfilled by merchant in order to manage compliance and then inventory levels effectively? How should sellers split that up?
So there are some sellers. 6 months ago, I would have said 98.5% of people need to be using FBA. There was a change to the reimbursement policy. So it used to be that when Amazon lost your inventory, if it was you were selling it for $20, they would say, okay, minus our fees, you would get $14.50. So we'll reimburse you $14.50. They've changed that to say, give us your cost of goods, or we will decide what those cost of goods are for you. And now we're going to only reimburse you the $3 or $6, right? Which means you're kind of out that capital that you had to front to purchase inventory.
Yeah.
So there are some luxury items where maybe now it makes more sense to merchant fulfilled. If that's the case, I would strongly, strongly recommend you do the hard work. And I'm not going to, sugarcoat it is hard work to get into seller fulfilled Prime, where you get the Prime badge, even though you're selling it yourself, if you're worried about that. But having a Prime badge, with the exception of those that have a lot of brand affinity, a lot of brand search volume, or your product is so unique that people can't get it other places, then you need to have an FBA offer. So if you're a spatula next to other 5,000 other spatulas and everybody else is FBA, you need to be FBA too. Right. If yours is a product that's specifically designed for Down syndrome kids with congenital heart defects, and this is the only product that's available, you can probably get away with merchant fulfilled or seller fulfilled Prime at a higher likelihood. But Amazon will tell you that FBA is a big key. And we have seen, even on products that we're selling well, 400% plus increase in conversion rate just by making the product FBA with no other changes.
Interesting. So when you say luxury goods, how do you classify that? Are you talking like higher end jewelry, or are you talking like product category, or just price tag?
More price tag, especially if you have a large margin. So when we kind of look at almost maybe, as I'm thinking this through out loud, I think we almost even look at it as the COGS of the product. So how much would the company be out if that inventory was lost? 2 years ago, Amazon had a problem with the warehouse that was processing sunglasses. And so sunglasses were getting lost a lot. So Amazon doesn't always lose inventory, but it's not, if you were to tell an Amazon seller, Amazon lost some of my inventory, they'd go, yeah, that sounds right. It happens. So it is something that you need to think about. I think for smaller brands, what you need to really think about is cash flow.
Yeah.
If you send everything in on one shipment and that shipment were to get lost, can you recover from that?
Yep.
And that's one thing that because sometimes brands will be like, we want to send everything in. We think this is going to go really, really great. And we have to kind of balance, like, yes, we want there to be inventory available if it's going really, really well, but we can pull back on those levers. So like, let's say a brand has a lot of, maybe you have an email list of 20,000. Instead of sending an email to your entire list saying it's available on Amazon, maybe we start by segmenting that out, and we start with 100 and then 200, and we kind of ramp up that awareness over time. Because what we want to make sure is that you're not putting yourself in a position where if something were to go wrong, you wouldn't be able to come out at the other side of that.
Interesting. That was going to be my next question, is there a certain size of seller where it makes sense to do it all yourself versus sending it in? So thank you for that. Are you finding it more difficult for young, smaller brands trying to get, a foothold in the market? Are they finding it more difficult to launch on Amazon these days?
So I would say Yes. Now, so there's a couple of different kinds of sellers. So if you're a private label seller, so you saw a Facebook ad that said Amazon's going to be a laptop lifestyle passive income, I guarantee you that will not work, especially if the price tag is $10, $25, or $35,000. I promise you, you will lose your money. I have never heard one person be like, yeah, that's how I became a millionaire. Any Amazon will tell you, sellers will tell you this is not a passive business. But with Amazon is actively courting brands, and they're actively courting young brands too. But Amazon has gotten a lot more complicated. So it is harder for a brand, when it was the Wild Wild West, you could kind of figure things out. Now it's like, well, they're asking for this. Well, is this an error? Is there, and so brands will try to launch themselves, and then they get frustrated, and then they never launch at all. Versus, and I know not every brand is in a place where they can do this, but if you can hire somebody that will help you walk through some of those paces, you can avoid things like inventory getting stranded. Because so let's say you have a lithium ion battery. You have to send that into a hazmat warehouse, which means you have to be approved for the hazmat program. If you send hazmat goods into FBA, Amazon is within their rights to just destroy that inventory.
Oh my gosh.
So we had a client that we said, there's no lithium ion batteries in this, right? And they're like, nope, no lithium ion batteries. Nope. And I was like, you're sure? No lithium ion batteries. Spoiler, there were lithium ion batteries in that.
And did it get destroyed?
Amazon. So we spent 6 months arguing with Amazon. They did destroy the inventory, but since our team had been proactive, sending seller support issues, escalating and calling every day for 6 months, we were able to get all $100,000 of the return back to that client.
Wow, that's wild. So how do sellers, or if you're a brand and have a team of Amazon marketers working for you, how do you stay updated on these compliance requirements that are rolling out, new ones that are coming out, or updates to them, so that they are following the rules and that they don't encounter any setbacks?
This is where so there's some things that Amazon just says, hey, a couple weeks ago, they said, hey, we're going to update the title policy. And people said, well, that stinks, but we can prepare for that. And as a result, most people were prepared for it. I didn't really hear much hubbub after it rolled out. Sometimes Amazon just feels like we don't have enough spice. We don't have enough caliente in our lives. So they will roll things out, and you'll see Amazon sellers are in group chats. They're in LinkedIn. They're in Facebook groups. And we monitor a bunch of those. I actually had to tell my kids, like, you're just on Facebook. I was like, this is work too. But we kind of monitor, and there's a lot of crowdsourcing. Like, I tried to upload this. What are has anybody else seen this error? Or, warning, I just got this and they referenced this policy, which I checked was not there before. Yeah. And so like last year, in the middle of the year, AI decided millions of products were plants seeds. There were seed products. And so they sent warnings saying, we're going to deactivate these listings if you don't take out your references to seeds. And people were like, well, it's a walkie-talkie. So I don't know what you're talking about. And it turned out to be AI gone wrong. And so there was a lot of LinkedIn posts, here's how I'm handling it. This is what seller support told me. And so there is a lot of that. But the easy thing to do is keep an eye on the forums and keep an eye on the Amazon news page. And then, that's a good place to kind of keep an eye if you don't want to have a whole bunch of social media where you're trying to track all of that.
Sure. That's a lot, I'm sure. A
yes.
lot. Okay. So wrapping up, like for brands who are really looking to scale on Amazon, what foundational practices should they be implementing to avoid setbacks and then being able to continue to grow their business month over month and year over year?
So I know that we talked about all the things that can go wrong, and Amazon is still a really amazing place. And all of those things it happened here, it happens there. It's very rarely that all of those things happen to sellers. If you're a brand, you're going to want to have a trademark so that you can get into the brand registry program. It's really important that we do that before you start to list your product on Amazon, because of that UPC issue and the things that it can cause further down the road. And then you want to make sure that you have looked into what are the requirements for your products. If you're a toy company, what is the CPSC requirements? Do you need lead? Do you need phthalates? If you're a food product, do you need a good manufacturer certificate? knowing those things yourself. And great places to find that out are, if you're going to do a toy, join ASTRA, which is the Association of Specialty Toy Retailers. If you're going to do a grocery item, then join the Specialty Food Association. And they will have forums that I can't get into because I'm a service provider, and rightfully so. We got to keep the spammers out, right? And you can have conversations of, this is the product I'm launching. What do I need? What lab companies have you had success with?
Yeah.
So those can be all really great places. You want to make sure that you have thought about making sure that your Amazon sales are not going to cannibalize your e-commerce sales, if that's the only place you're selling. And if you have big box distribution already, you really need to talk to somebody who understands the impact of resellers to determine whether or not you need to change your packaging before it goes to those big boxes, or to have an Amazon only SKU. This is going to be the really, really key if you need to use advertising to grow your platform. If you search for Lego, you will find on that first page there are non-Lego products. It is possible to outrank a brand for their own branded keywords with conversion history. So you're going to want to make sure that you're really thinking through, how are you going to combat knockoffs, and making sure that your intellectual property is protected. But the biggest thing is, when you sign on, I just had somebody do this. Do not let an agency set up your Amazon Seller Central account for you. You need to be the primary email on there. Trust me, I've had to deal with many nightmares for this. Do not let that happen. Any good agency will walk you through you setting it up. So, it should always be you. And then Amazon, read the 14 guiding principles of Amazon. Because Amazon, that is not just like something on their webpage. That is 100% how they operate. And you need to understand that to understand why they implement some of the policies that they do.
Is that a resource on Amazon.com for sellers?
Oh, you might have to, I think you have to Google. I think it's on LinkedIn. They move it around. I think it actually might not be the 14 principles. I think they added 2 principles. I think it might be 16 principles now. But if you just do Amazon guiding principles, so I know people who work at Amazon. I'm like, all right, come on. And they're like, no, you cannot submit a project without being asked about this principle or that principle. And the biggest one is customer obsession. If you're not ready to really care about your customer's experience, Amazon's going to be a very challenging channel for you.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's going to be a great resource. And I also love that you mentioned, don't let your agency own your accounts. It's the same for us on the D2C side, right? It's like, agency should not own your Meta account. It should not own your Google Ads account. It's the same. You need to have control over that, and then grant your teams access to the data that they need.
Especially on Amazon, that controlling account determines where the payouts go.
Yeah.
So that means you might not get, that all of the revenue could go to that agency if they wanted to be nefarious.
Interesting. Well, Robin, that was awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today. I am incredibly grateful that you took time out of your busy schedule. We're recording on a Friday afternoon. You'd probably rather be just relaxing on the couch. But thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me. I love helping sellers, especially young emerging brands and people who are looking to take it to the next level. So thanks for letting me share my nerddom. My friends get a little tired of me talking about Amazon.
No, it was great. And that's why we do this, right? To help small brands and mom and pops and people be able to grow their businesses. So
that was a great conversation, a great episode, and I know that we learned a lot. And so to our listeners, I hope that you've been able to pull a couple of really good nuggets of wisdom. Take those things, make a plan, and take massive action this year. Thank you everyone so much for joining.